Hi, fourth graders, and welcome back to Sun Devil Learning Labs. Today's topic is point of view, third person, for fourth grade ELA. Let's begin by going over today's objective, which is I can explain what third person point of view is and how to recognize it in a story. So take a moment to read today's objective out loud or in your head and really focus on what we will be learning today in our lesson. Again, we'll be focusing on third person. So if you notice in our objective, it said third person point of view. So before going over exactly what third person is, let's take a second to look at what is point of view. Point of view is a perspective from which a story is told. So the point of view is the perspective that the story that we are reading is being told. So whoever is telling the story, that is coming from their perspective and coming from their point of view. And the two different points of views that we are focusing on this week are first person and third person. So let's review first person real quick. First person, the author is writing from their point of view or perspective. The main character is telling the story. So in a first person narrative or text, the author is writing from their point of view and their perspective. So it's normally the main character who is telling the story in a first person perspective. And then third person, which we are focusing on today, the narrator is someone outside of the story and is not one of the characters. And the narrator tells us about all the characters and their action. So again, in third person, the narrator is not one of the characters. The narrator is someone from outside of the story. And the narrator is telling us about all of the characters and their actions. Whereas in first person, the narrator is a character in the actual story. So point of view. We want to find the point of view so we are able to understand who is telling the story. And so we may better understand their perspective on events happening. So it's really important for us as readers to understand the point of view that a story is being told in. The narrator is the outside person or third person or main character that tells the story. We see the story from their point of view. So the narrator can be an outside person, and when the narrator is an outside person, that means our text or our story is being told in third person. And if the narrator is the main character that is telling the story, then we are looking at a first person text. Third person. A person not involved in the actual story is telling the story when we're looking at third person. In third person, the person telling the story is including the thinking and actions of all characters. So when a story is being told in third person, we are having information brought to us about the thinking and actions of all the characters, not just one character. In a third person story, it is almost like we are looking at the story through a window and watching the story occur. So that is a really, really good way to think about a third person story. So it's almost like we as the readers are watching the story through a window and we are watching the story occur because we are not in the story, but we are being told the story from someone who is outside of the story just like us. So it's almost like we're just peeking through a window and we're able to look through and see the story occur. That is how the story is being read to us from an outside perspective. And the narrator from a third person story is watching the story and telling us about events and characters, but is not actually in the story. The narrator watches the story and tells us about it. So the narrator, just like us in a third person point of view, the narrator is watching the story from the outside and is telling us about it. So these are some clue words that we can look for within a text or a story to find out if this text is being told in third person. And the words that we are looking at are pronouns. There are pronouns that we can look for in a story in order to identify if it is being told in third person. Let's review the definition of pronoun in case we don't remember it. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. There are pronouns that we can look for in a story in order to identify if it is being told in third person. So again, when we are looking at, when we are reading a story, we should try to identify these pronouns. And pronouns are words that replace a noun. Pronouns, these exact pronouns will be able to tell us if the story is being told in third person. So clue words for third person are he, she, it, they, and them. If you notice, these words are a little bit different from the first person clue words. The first person clue words are more me, I, but in a third person text, the clue words are again he, she, it, they, and them. These words are clue words for third person text because these are words used to talk about other people and other things, not to talk about myself, or not to talk, if the narrator were talking about themselves, they would say I or me. But in third person, we're talking about someone else in the story, so we're saying he or she, or it, or they, or them. Let's look at third person versus first person clue words. So when looking for the point of view of a story, we must be able to identify the difference between the clue words for third person and first person. So again, the same clue words that we just went over for third person, and the clue words for first person being I, us, me, and we. I want you guys to take a look and notice the difference between these words, and being able to notice the difference between these words will help us as readers be able to identify a first person and a third person text when we are reading it. Take a moment to look over these words real quick. We will move on to our next slide. So how do we recognize third person? We can recognize a story is written in third person through the way the narrator speaks in the story. Think to yourself, is the narrator using words like me and I, or they and them? To recognize that a story is being written in third person, also look to see if the story is being told by a character in the story or being told by someone else that is outside of the story. So those are two really important things to look for when you're looking to see if a story is being told in third person or first person. We need to look at the story is being told by someone outside of the story, or if the story is being told by someone in the story, a character in the story. And also we should be looking for clue words, the clue words that we just went over in our last couple of slides. All right, let's take a real quick moment to go over some of the information that we just learned by going over an example text and spotting clue words within our example text, which is written in third person. So our example text says, the kids were excited about their first field trip. They were visiting the beach in San Diego. Jack was really looking forward to seeing the shells on the beach. He could hardly wait to get to the beach. So in this example text, we should notice a couple of clue words within the text that tell us that the story is written in third person. There's a couple clue words. These clue words are also pronouns. Take a moment to think to yourself, what are these pronouns? What are these clue words in this example text that tell me this is a third person text? The clue words are they and he. So hopefully you guys were able to notice that the words they and he were in our story. This tells us that this is a third person text. This lets us know that someone else is also telling the story. Someone else outside of the story. It's not one of the kids telling the story, and it's not Jack telling the story. In the first sentence, it says, the kids were excited about their first field trip. They, second sentence says, they were visiting the beach in San Diego. This lets us know as readers that one of the kids is not telling the story. It's somebody on the outside telling the story. And again, someone on the outside of the story is our narrator for this story. Great way to identify that was through identifying our clue words. Let's go over a few more third-person examples. These are just real quick sentences, but they are written in third person. And remember to look for the clue words in the sentences as I'm reading. The first sentence says, Tiffany used her prize money from the science fair to buy herself a new microscope. What are the clue words in the sentence? We should have noticed the clue word was her and herself. Tiffany used her prize money. So this tells us that Tiffany's not talking about herself. It is somebody on the outside telling us about Tiffany using her prize money. The middle sentence, the concert goers roared their approval when they realized they'd be getting an encore. So think to yourself, what are the clue words in this sentence? Are there clue words? I spotted a couple clue words. So the clue words in this sentence, there, they, and they. These words tell us that this sentence is written by somebody outside of the concert. Again. And our last sentence, Cooper jumped when he heard the scream, but he finished painting before he did anything about it. What are our clue words in this sentence? You guys should have said our clue words for this sentence were he. So Cooper jumped when he heard the scream, but he finished painting before he did anything about it. The word he is used a few times in this sentence, and this tells us that Cooper's not talking about himself. Someone else is talking about him and telling us about what happened. So what is the impact of a text being told in third person? Through third person stories, we have to base information in the story off of what we are being told as an outsider. So through a third person story, we're not being told the story through one of the eyes of another character, but we're looking at the story as an outsider. So we're getting all of the same juicy details that we might get from a character in the story, but we're getting them as an outsider perspective. So we're seeing everything. We're seeing all of the action, all of the feelings, everything. We are going off of characters' actions again, rather than getting a look into the mind of one of the characters, as we would in first person. So we are going off the characters' actions and the way the characters are acting to make our own judgments and assumptions. And we base our judgments and assumptions in a third person text from information we are given from someone who is not a character. So we are not being given our information from someone who is a character who could think a certain way about one of the characters and maybe not give us all of the information we need to make a correct judgment or have a full understanding of that character. But with third person, we are being told everything from the outside perspective, which lets us have a full look at everything going on within our story. So take a moment to grab a pencil and a piece of paper, please. And our next few slides, we're going to do a real quick activity. We're going to read a text and fill out a quick graphic organizer for the text. So take a moment to go ahead and grab your pencil and a piece of paper. Okay, welcome back everyone. At this point, you should all have a piece of paper in front of you along with a pencil. I want you all to take a moment to draw this chart onto your piece of paper. So this is a really simple chart to draw on your piece of paper. It's really just a long rectangle with a line right down the middle. The title for our chart is Third Person Point of View. In our chart, you guys are going to be filling in this information as I read. So you're going to fill in clues, which are clue words that you notice throughout the story that help us as readers know that the story is written in third person. So again, these words could be he, she, they, them. And then on the right side, we have, I know this text was written in third person point of view because ... So what I want you guys to do here is finish this sentence and write down just something that you know from the text, from me reading the text, something that really helps you as a reader understand that this text is written in third person point of view. And after we are finished reading, we will go over this chart and we will go over the clue words that I found and the sentence that I wrote about how I was able to understand that the text was written in a third person point of view. So take a moment to pause the video if you need to and complete your chart on your piece of paper. And then when you unpause, we are going to move on to our text and read our third person story. Okay, you guys should all be prepared with your chart on your piece of paper and your pencil in hand. Make sure to fill out our chart as I read. As always, feel free to pause the video if I am reading too quickly for you and read the text out loud, read the text in your head. Look up any words that you are unfamiliar with, and we will begin. So our text is called Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Corinne skipped through the parking lot. She couldn't hold back her excitement. Her family was going to the baseball stadium for the first time. Corinne, chill out, said her brother, Jake. Jake was only 2 years older than Corinne, but he thought that gave him the authority to boss her around. Corinne slowed to a walk and waited for her family to catch up. I can't help it, she said. I've never been to a baseball game before. Corinne had watched countless baseball games on television. Baseball was her favorite sport, and she had been a Chicago Cubs fan as long as she could remember. Corinne thought that the best moment of her life would be when the Cubs finally broke their curse and won the World Series. The team had been losing for decades, but she knew that sooner or later they had to win. But tonight, her family wasn't going to see the Cubs. They were going to see the Cougars, a new minor league team that had come to their town. Jake wasn't excited about the game. He thought the minor leagues didn't count. The minor leagues is for players who aren't good enough for the major league, Jake always said. But Corinne liked the idea that these players weren't famous yet. They were still training and learning just like her. Maybe she'd see baseball's next big star. Maybe he'd even sign a baseball for her. Mom, Corinne said, can we wait outside the dugout after the game? I want to get some autographs. Sure we can, said Corinne's mother, but let's enjoy the game first. They pulled out their tickets and walked into the stadium. The stadium security guard checked Corinne's mother's purse and waved them through. Corinne breathed in deeply. The air smelled like a delicious mix of popcorn and soda. Corinne looked at the tickets and saw that they were sitting on the upper level just past third base. They walked up the concrete stairs and found their seats as the first inning was beginning. Corinne couldn't decide whether to watch the field itself or the enormous screen behind the outfield. Her eyes darted back and forth between the two. The Cougars were pitching first. She cheered at the top of her lungs for every strike and booed when anyone on the other team, the Cyclones, got a hit. Even Jake looked like he was having fun, cheering just as loudly as Corinne. The game was close. The Cougars would score, then the Cyclones would score. Back and forth, the two teams battled. The Cyclones had a better pitcher, but the Cougars were quicker. Corinne especially liked the shortstop. He was short like her, and he was really agile. No matter where the ball was, he was there first. He seemed to have a magic ability to predict its path. Mom, said Corinne, tugging on her mother's sleeve, what's the shortstop's name? Her mother looked through the program searching. Corey Alvarez, she said. Corey, thought Corinne, just like me. By the end of the ninth inning, the teams were still tied, and the Cougars were up to bat. This is it, Corinne said to Jake. If the Cougars can manage to score just one run, then we'll win. Don't be such a baby, said Jake. It really doesn't matter. It's just the minor leagues. Corinne noticed, though, that Jake was leaning forward in his seat and watching the batter with interest. Jake could pretend to be cool as a cucumber, but inside he was just as excited as Corinne. The batter turned, and Corinne saw that it was her favorite player, Corey Alvarez. Come on, Corey, she thought. You can do it. Corey walked up to the home plate and tapped the bat on the ground twice. Then he lifted the bat and waited. The pitcher wound up and threw a ball so fast Corinne didn't even see it. She heard the crack when the bat hit the ball, though, and saw the ball flying through the air toward third base. The ball sailed past the base, then over the stands and straight toward Corinne's family. Corinne climbed up on her seat and put her hands out. She felt a sting and tumbled backwards as the baseball slammed into her palms. She tumbled out of her chair, and her parents kneeled over her. Corinne! Corinne! Are you okay? Corinne held up the baseball and smiled. I'm much more than okay, she said. All right, guys. that is the end of our short story. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope at this point our graphic or our charts are almost complete. If they are not, go ahead and pause this video and complete your charts, and then we will spend a couple minutes going over the chart. Review of chart. We have a third person point of view. The clue words that were present in the text were she, they, he, and her. Hopefully you guys were able to notice these clue words that were present in the text and were able to write these words down into your chart. These words that were present in the text were able to tell us as readers that this story was being told in third person, and it was not being told in first person. If it was being told in first person, we might have had someone like Corinne or her brother or her mother telling the story. But we had someone from the outside, on the outside of the story, telling our story to us. And let's move on to our sentence about how we knew this text was written in third person. So this is what I wrote. It could be different from what you guys wrote, and if it is, that is totally okay. Just wanted you guys to spend a little bit of time really thinking about, how did you know that this text was written in third person? So I wrote, I know this text was written in third person because the narrator is not a character within the story. And I am viewing the story from an outside perspective. So that is the sentence that I wrote for how I knew the text was written in third person. Again, the sentence that you guys might have written might be a little bit different, and that is totally okay. These clue words that I was able to notice in the story, hopefully you guys were able to notice as well. Again, these were clue words and pronouns that are unique and specific to third person point of view. And let's go over what we learned today. This is the conclusion of our lesson. So today we learned how to recognize when a short story is being told in third person. We learned about clue words, which are pronouns that are present within a third person text. We learned how we can recognize the difference between a third person story and a first person story. And we learned the impact of a third person text to us as the readers of the story. So today we learned exactly how we can tell that a story is being told in third person. So if you guys, the next time that you guys are reading a story, I want you to think to yourself, is this text being told to me in third person? Or is the text being told in first person? Use the knowledge that you learned today to answer that question. You guys did awesome today. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson about third person point of view. I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.